better put my sock on.
Good evening. Happy Tuesday. I'm Lisa.
Hello, I'm Jamie. Hello, everyone.
Along with Danielle, we are Curious Casefiles. Danielle is not with us this evening. She's suffering at the moment from sciatica, so bless her, and we hope she gets better soon and she'll be back next week. But in the meantime, you're stuck with us. And yes, I know. I don't know what happened, but I know. Let me look at this just before we continue. Got nothing to do with what we're doing, but this is what was supposed to happen. And this abomination, like purpley black with like pink bits in it, this is what happened. And I don't know what happened. What happened? I don't know what happened.
You don't know.
It shouldn't
It's
have.
really weird.
I went to all that effort to get the black out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's fucking black again. So yay, yeah. And then I chopped some off because I was in the off. So yeah, that's what happened to me this week.
Yep, and I just managed to fix Lisa's computer accidentally and break my one. But
Yeah, he's fixed mine, but his is broken. So yay.
Brooker did. Don't know how.
Right, so before I get into this, I've got a slight disclaimer, so I'm going to read this to you because I wrote it down to make sure that I didn't. What's this?
Yeah.
What?
That doesn't look as bad in real life as
That's
it's
not.
on there.
That doesn't exist. I've got a blob. I've got a blob. Anyway, yeah. This is actually quite. It's not going to be fun. This one. So, bereavement is one of the hardest things that any of us will have to deal with in our lifetime. The loss of a loved one fills us with an all-encompassing sense of grief. It's a raw, emotional pain that no words can describe. And dealing with that grief and that sense of loss is one of the most difficult things that we'll ever have to face. Nobody's immune to it. It's a harsh reality that everybody has to face at some point in their lives, whether that be the loss of a parent, a sibling, a spouse, a child, or even a close friend. In these times, we turn to strangers and entrust them with the care of our loved ones to prepare them for their final journey. We have an unspoken expectation that these people will treat them with professionalism, dignity, and respect, and a little bit of care and compassion, whilst they're also helping you and your family to deal with the process. In most cases, that's exactly what happens. and these strangers help you to facilitate a send-off that is both respectful and in line with the wishes of your loved one. However, that's not always the case, and that's what we're going to be covering today. This topic is not an easy one to talk about. Having been through the process of grief with my own parents, I found it really difficult to research this topic. And as me and Jamie dug deeper and we discovered multiple cases just like it, it was horrifying. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it's horrifying. And it was difficult not to bring to the surface the memories of my own grief. I did sympathise with the victims, and I dared to imagine how these events have impacted them and their mental health. This episode will contain discussions about bereavement and the care that our loved ones receive after death, or in this case, the lack thereof. And I'm sure it will be as difficult for you to learn these things as it was for us to research them. We actually stopped at several points during our research into this and considered whether it was something that we wanted to proceed with due to the upsetting nature of the topic, obviously. But ultimately, we decided that we had to. Because although it's difficult to hear, these stories need to be told and they need to be talked about in order to facilitate changes, much needed changes to laws and regulations surrounding the industry of death. Because cases like this are far too common, as we discovered, and that's unacceptable. It's not acceptable at all. And if nobody's willing to talk about it, then it will continue to occur right under the radar and right under our noses. In the same respect, we understand that it might be too much for some people. We're all on different journeys in our grief and at different junctions along the way. And if that's something that's too raw for you at this moment in time, then I would recommend that you don't watch this episode. It's probably not the best episode for you to watch, in which case we do send you our love and we'll see you next week. For those of you who are going to stay with us, do understand that we will be discussing some disturbing topics concerned with the funeral industry. And it'll make you angry. It will make you angry and it'll make you sad as well at the same time. It'll make you go through a whole roller coaster of emotions. And that's okay, because we all should be fucking angry that these things are even happening in 2023. It's just like, what? And they go relatively unpunished, which is even more disgraceful. And we should all feel for the families involved, and we should all be demanding better. So with that said, let's get into today's case. So this is something that's recent, it's in the media right now, and we've been following it. We're going to go back to the history first, though. Now, the Return to Nature funeral home opened for business in Colorado Springs as the first green funeral home that they had on the 5th of September 2017. Its first location was a small property located at 123 East Animas Street in Colorado Springs. I've got a little picture. That's from Google Earth, just showing you the location. It had been registered on August the 18th of that year, so less than a month before, to provide funeral services. Mm-hmm. Now, for those of you that don't know, a green funeral home is one that uses embalming fluids and uses biodegradable materials and tries to reduce its impact on the environment, which is great. I mean, I'm all for that. Funerals would either be via cremation or burial in a biodegradable casket. And interment would take place at cemeteries where green burials were allowed. The two that Return to Nature had used were the local Fairview and Evergreen cemeteries, which had small areas that were reserved for these specific types of burial. It was owned by Jon and Carie Hallford and their friend, Jack DeHoogie.
I mean, you can see why people. I mean, I should imagine that was quite popular.
It's appealing, yeah.
Because, well, you know, obviously in the media and everything, they're all pushing for green and things like that, and it seems like a nice idea, and the name is great. So I can see that it was, or I should imagine it became quite popular quite quickly. I know popular is a bit of a weird, but you've got to use somebody, and I think that would probably appeal to a lot of people.
This is two of the owners. This is Jon Hallford and his wife Carie. and they owned it alongside another man, Jack Doogie. I don't know how to say his name. It's D-H-O-O-G-H-E. Doogie? I don't know. That's his name, but he's not mentioned very much, but we'll get to that later. And that's him with Jack, and that's the three of them outside.
Yeah.
So, I'll just get rid of that. So, a news article, this was great at the time. Everybody was really excited about this. And a news article dated November 28th, 2017 in the Denver Gazette was titled, "First Green Funeral Home in Colorado Springs Opens for Business." And it says, quote, I quote this. So, when a funeral director is viscerally disturbed by the odour of embalming fluid, you know something is off. That's what happened to Jon Hallford when he bent over a casket earlier this year to kiss the forehead of a dead relative. It was unpleasant and chemical, said the fourth-generation Oklahoman funeral director. Which we'll find out later. Might not be entirely true, but yeah. I got to thinking that, wow, I wonder how many times I have facilitated this exact same experience for other families throughout the years. Those thoughts led to action, and months later, during the first week of September, as we just said, Hallford, with his wife Carie and their friend Jack, opened Return to Nature Funeral Home, the city's first green burial funeral home. Customers can receive all the services of a traditional funeral home except embalming. No bodies will be filled with toxic fluids in the Victorian-style home south of downtown. Not if the Hallfords have anything to say about it. I knew through mortuary school about cancer-causing chemicals, but never really thought about it, Hallford said. My mind started shifting from, I hope I haven't given such an unpleasant experience to families, which, in retrospect, really, to I have really been ingesting this stuff for so many years. And it's not just Hallford and thousands of other mortuary workers who have soaked up the deadly chemicals. It's also Mother Earth, according to the newspaper. Mm-hmm. The article ended with, public response to the new funeral home has been overwhelmingly positive. It's fulfilling for the Hallfords to help people better understand their options and honour the last wishes of the deceased and their loved ones. Oh, the irony. If you want to get shot out of a cannon, wonderful, said Hallford. Random. We're here to walk you through that process and facilitate whatever it is your family wants to do with the mourning and passing of your loved ones. And he's a fucking liar, just putting out there. Spoiler alert, liar. Our very first service we had in a park and we had a biodegradable balloon release. We want to be the exact opposite of Cookie Cutter. Oh, and he certainly turns out to be. Anyway, who is Jon Hallford? John Michael Hallford is a 43-year-old man who was born in Wagoner, Oklahoma. Hallford had an apprentice license as a funeral director in Oklahoma, which was valid from 2001 through 2004, which basically meant as an apprentice he had to work under an actual funeral director who was licensed. He never held either a funeral director's license nor an embalmer's license in the state of Oklahoma. He did have a provisional license in Texas, but that was cancelled, so he didn't have it for long. His Instagram page stated that he was a 2004 graduate of the Dallas Mortuary School, but I could find no evidence of that apart from his word for it. So we'll take that with a pinch of salt, according to him. And I didn't know there was mortuary schools either, so that's weird. But obviously there must be, but you don't think about things like that.
No.
Anyway,
weird.
His professional background aside, Hallford has an extensive history of legal and financial troubles dating back to the time when he resided in Oklahoma.
No, here we go.
In 2006, John was running for a seat on the Muskogee City Council.
Muskogee,
I think that's how you say it.
Yeah,
Muskogee. When he was arrested on a misdemeanor weapons charge. The following is from a news report at the time. And this is So, a Muskogee City Council hopeful said Thursday that he used very bad judgment last year when he took part in a prank in which he and friends invaded a slumber party wearing masks and brandishing firearms.
You did say misdemeanor, didn't you?
Bad judgment, yeah. The fake robbery apparently, allegedly, sounded innocent enough, and it lasted just a minute or two. I bet it's felt like to the girls a hell of a lot longer.
Not innocent enough, yeah.
And when we recognised the girls were getting scared, we took the masks off and said it was all a big joke, Jon Michael Hallford said. Fucking hilarious!
I'd have punched him in the face and said,
hilarious!
Joke.
Halford, who was 26 at the time, and 2 co-defendants appeared in Wagner County District Court on Thursday, each charged with a misdemeanour count of pointing a deadly weapon. Halford pleaded not guilty, even though he did it, and was released on his own recognizance, ordered by Special Judge David Nelson to return to court on April the 6th. That was 2 days after Muscogee's municipal elections. A Muscogee
That's gonna get you every time.
A funeral director at his family business. Halford is campaigning for the first time, running for the council's Ward 2 seat.
Can I just say?
No.
Can you imagine if they went diving in there and the actual, the party goers were armed and they protected themselves, which they were, quite rightfully able to do, I should imagine. Then we wouldn't be discussing this, and then we wouldn't have all these issues. But yeah.
So the article continues, and he's obviously taken responsibility for his shitty decisions in life. He said, "This happened last August, and here we are, moments before the election, and charges are filed, and now it's an issue. No, it was always an issue, but these things take time. You fucking idiot. Anyway, I just don't understand it," he said. "It's like the whole thing has gotten completely out of hand. Did you think you were going to get away with doing something like that? Did you? Did you really?" Halford and his friends went to the residence on Whitehorn Cove area of Fort Gibson, wearing camouflage clothing. I can't speak today. Camouflage clothing. That's a tongue twister.
That's got to be bad when I
and ski masks to scare several girls, and he didn't know them. But it was a joke. I'm not even going to read the rest, but he's like putting this...
Why would you play a joke on a stranger?
He's putting this narrative forward that it's all politically motivated and it wasn't a problem till now, and that he didn't do anything wrong and it was a joke. But he broke into a house wearing camouflage gear, ski masks, and pointed guns. Now, granted, the guns were not loaded, but the girls didn't know that the guns weren't loaded. They were real guns. Anyway, it should have been a felony charge, in my opinion. Didn't come from me. But he was released on his own recognizance, and he did seem to have got punished for that. Apart from the only punishment was that he did really badly in the election. Surprise, surprise, and didn't get on the council.
Yeah, he probably could do rubbish anyway, wouldn't he?
But he sounds like a fucking stand-up guy so far, really. Yeah. Now, the legal issues didn't end there for Hallford. Court records from the state of Oklahoma show that Hallford had numerous civil disputes spanning several years, and he was ordered to pay thousands of dollars to various entities before he moved to Colorado. Because apparently, he's got a habit of not paying for anything. Tulsa County records show that in 2006, Hallford was ordered to pay over £8,000 to the Creditors Recovery Corporation. In 2009, court records from Tulsa County show that Hallford was ordered to pay over $1,000. I said pounds a minute ago, didn't I?
Yeah, whatever.
It was $8,000. I'm British, I'm sorry. He was ordered to pay over $1,000 in a default judgment to an apartment complex after being served a forcible entry and detainer and failing to appear for a court date. So obviously he'd been evicted and it had to forcibly enter, and he got fined for that. In 2011, court records from Tulsa County show that Hallford and Hallford Cremation and Funeral Options LLC, which is apparently his family's funeral director business, which we'll cover in a moment, so just bear that in mind, were sued by Shannon Square LLC. Records show that the court issued a default judgment against Hallford in the amount of more than $5,000 after he failed to appear in court for a hearing. He likes doing that as well. He likes not turning up as well. This is a pattern. Further court records from the 2011 civil case show that in 2013, Shannon Square still had yet to be paid, and it is believed that the defendant, J. Michael Hallford, is possessed of property which the defendant conceals and refuses to apply to the payment of the said judgment. So unless you find out that he's got other properties that he's concealing for the court, which might come into play later. Yeah. So bear that in mind as well. I need to take a little mouthful because Jamie's got a sore throat today, so I'm doing all the reading. Sorry.
My computer's screwed.
Records from the Oklahoma Secretary of State website show that Hallford Cremation and Funeral Options entered its article of organization in 2010, but that was terminated only a year later in 2011. No records exist with the Oklahoma Funeral Board for a business called Hallford Cremation and Funeral Options, which is apparently his family's funeral business, which is bizarre. They're not registered at all. Several court records from Tulsa County indicate that Hallford had worked at Forrest Peterson Funeral Home in 2006 and Moore Funeral Home in 2010. Court records also show that Hallford had been married and divorced to 3 different women prior to marrying his current wife and the co-owner of Return to Nature Funeral Home, Carie Hallford. In addition to the 2006 gun charge, he's also previously pleaded guilty to 2 minor criminal charges of operating a motor vehicle without a license, so he's obviously got a little pattern there of thinking that they don't need licenses for anything, even driving, and also driving without a seatbelt. A 2005 criminal case against Hallford in Wagner County alleged reckless conduct and was dismissed only 2 weeks after filing, and there was no more information on that. But yeah,
you'd have thought
stand up, bloke.
Somebody who wanted to be, into to politics and all that, like professionally, they would be a bit more professional about things. But clearly, he's a law unto his own, as we'll find out.
Yeah, just does whatever the hell he likes, apparently. So Jon and wife number 4, Carie, met in Oklahoma. Carie already had 2 children from a previous marriage. After their engagement, they decided to relocate and moved to Lone Tree, Colorado. At that time, Carie explained to her ex-husband, the father of her children, that Michael, she was calling him Michael at this point, which is also relevant. Bear that in mind. You've got to bear a lot in mind here, so you might have to watch this twice. Michael had a very good job just south of Denver. This was in October of 2013. But the following year, they moved to Colorado Springs. So it can't have been that bloody good a job that he didn't stay there that very long, did he? So that was all in 2014. And it'd be 3 years later, in 2017, that the couple, along with a friend, opened Return to Nature Funeral Home. Now, looking up Return to Nature, it seems perfect. It's got glowing reviews from clients. And honestly, if I was looking for a funeral service in that particular area, and I read some of these reviews and the descriptions of the business and the misleading claims written by Jon himself, I might think seriously and seriously consider using them because it seems like they're really good. You can get a green funeral. It's better for the environment. They've got all these really good reviews.
They look after you.
And that's actually terrifying. Now, I'm not for 1 second blaming any of the grieving families for this, or the people that left these positive reviews, because for all intents and purposes, the service that they received at the time seemed professional and caring at the time. Only in hindsight, once the truth finally came out, would these poor people realise how taken advantage of they had been in their most vulnerable of moments. Here are some of the reviews and statements by Jon that you can find online. If I just grab that up, got it. I've not been keeping up with my slides. Right. So this one is on 3 best rated. And they're about, with 3 generations of funeral service experience. How true that is, I don't know, because his family funeral service in Oklahoma was never registered. So is it really? They have the expertise and knowledge to ensure that the final journey of your loved one is handled with the utmost care, pride, and distinction. Bullshit. It goes on. They also claim that they've been in operation on several occasions. They'll claim that Return to Nature was established 80 years ago, which is bullshit because it was only established in 2017. I don't know what this 80 years ago bullshit is, but he tells people that it's 80 years ago. They've been in, and that makes
unless
you think,
he's talking about the whole bit, the family in general in that sort of industry, but he doesn't make it clear.
It's misleading.
Misleading.
It's misleading.
Yeah, at least.
So, here are some of the reviews. John's role in my dad's funeral service was everything I know Dad would have wanted. He was respectful and professional, and the service was meaningful but low-key. Although my dad, an honourably discharged Army Guard veteran, did not have a military burial per se, John made sure we had a flag for Dad's casket, which he assisted in folding and presenting to my mother. It was so meaningful to our family how well everything was handled. Sounds great. John handled the services for my dad, and is one of the most compassionate and caring person I have ever met. Everything was handled quickly and smoothly. Notice there's a theme here, though, that it's like quickly. It's all done quickly.
Yeah.
Can't imagine going through this without him. They're affordable and experienced. Are they though? And there's loads. You can go to all different places, and there's absolute loads. And it looks like it's a really good place to go, and you're going to get well taken care of. You've also got on next door. They've got recommendations, and the recommendation summary on there is: neighbours in Colorado Springs highly recommend Return to Nature Burial and Cremation for their deeply dedicated service and commitment to eco-friendly burial practices. John, who handles the arrangements, is praised for his dedication to serving people in their time of grief. The business stands out for its unique focus on green burial practices, raising awareness about environmentally friendly options in the funeral industry. Return to Nature Burial and Cremation is the go-to choice for those seeking a compassionate and eco-conscious approach to funeral services and cemeteries.
It sounds like he wrote that himself. You reckon?
Well,
or is it there like their review? You never know, do you?
But it's just under the surface, though, problems were bubbling, or we wouldn't be here talking about it. The funeral home moved locations multiple times over its 6 years in business. 6 years, not 80. 6.
Yeah. They don't say that on their website, do they?
So from Canyon City to Colorado Springs to Penrose, Colorado. These moves were most likely motivated by financial issues. They didn't provide enough parking for clients at any of these locations, which understandably was frustrating for people in the neighbouring properties. But around the end of 2019 and into 2020, they actually began to get some negative reviews, which is an indication that the problems had become so severe that it was becoming difficult to hide them. I've got a couple of examples of those as well. So there is a marked change. It's like 5-star positive, and then you get things like this. And I've took the names out of these out of respect for the people involved. I would not trust this place with a pet, much less a family member. They refused to call me back when I was trying to find out about my brother's ashes. Instead, they gave his ashes to his girlfriend, who refused to share them. All I wanted was a pendant made for my daughter, who was very close to her uncle. Also, my mum is still alive, so legally, she should have had rights to his ashes. I called multiple times and was always told they would call me back, and they never did. The location listed is an empty house, so you can't even reach anyone by going to the location. The place seems extremely sketchy, and the sign out front is falling apart. Do not trust these people. They do not care about your loved ones.
Yeah, I mean they should have checked that first of all, who the ashes are going to and everything beforehand. Yeah. And
then we got the owner, Jon Hallford, posted a classical racial trope on social media. When this was pointed out to him, he doubled down and with personal attacks and racially charged claims. When he saw I had left him a negative review as a result, he contacted me in an attempt to get me to meet him to fight. Not professional behaviour from beginning to end.
Really?
And then the other one is about poor parking for multiple vehicles, and that's a resident saying that it's like very disrespectful and disappointing to the neighbourhood. That's just complaining about the parking issues. But to contact somebody who leaves you a negative review, to meet him to have a fight. Is he 12? Really?
Clearly, probably.
So, in 2019, Return to Nature purchased a property at 31 Werner Road in Penrose, Colorado, for around $200,000. So they were making money. They had money. That's important.
Mind you, they may not have done. They might have been appearing to have made. Well, they probably were making money.
And that is the Google Maps of that location. At one stage, Return to Nature had a license to operate as a funeral home in Penrose, but the license for the Penrose property expired on November the 30th, 2022. Now, when that happens, there's two options. Either you renew the license or you close down your business. Jon Hallford did neither. He instead continued operating as a funeral business, despite now not having a license. Now, Return to Nature historically used Wilbur Funeral Services as their crematory, as they didn't have their own. Now, many small funeral homes subcontract this. There's nothing unusual there. They subcontract this service out to a business who specialises in cremation. And obviously, you've got to pay the contractor for their services, as you would with anything that you're contracting out. But Jon Hallford, as has been the case throughout his entire life, do you think he paid Jamie?
Yeah, I should imagine an upstanding guy like him, Mr. Politician.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't pay. And Wilbur Funeral Services, therefore, in November 2022, cut ties with them and would no longer facilitate a professional relationship with the Hallfords or Return to Nature. So in November last year, that was only 2022, they had lost their access to cremation services completely.
That's going to be a problem then.
And they no longer had a license to operate as a funeral home. There are obviously other crematories in the area, but one would assume that they communicate with each other, and the others would have been very well aware that Jon had outstanding debts and he was not forthcoming in making payments for the services provided. So they most likely would have been apprehensive to do work with him or his business. Now, I'll just get past them because I'll just... Right. In March this year, still having received no payments from Jon, so that was November that the Wilbur Funeral Services cut ties with him, they filed a civil lawsuit against both him and Carie to recover monies owed. Nobody from Return to Nature appeared in court because, as we've already noted, Jon doesn't even bother going to court. He don't care. He don't pay. He don't turn up in court. He don't get licenses. Law is he's above the law. He doesn't need to do any of that shit. In June, the judge ruled in favour of Wilbur Funeral Services for an amount in excess of $18,000. On top of this, Return to Nature was also not paying rent to the landlords of their 815 East Platte Avenue location. That's in Colorado Springs. And it's estimated that they owe them over $97,000 for rent, damages, and other charges. So much money.
So what is he spending his money on?
Well, God knows. So at one stage, they put a notice on their website, which the whole website's now been removed. But the notice read, before it was removed, because obviously this is like currently happening, it's still in progress. As of July 2023, Return to Nature no longer offers cremation services. We will, however, honour pre-existing arrangements for direct cremation only. Now, it's bizarre that they've lost the ability to cremate decedents in November, and it's took them 8 months to put this statement on their website, and it refers to only honouring direct cremation. So, what is direct cremation? Well, do you know what it is, Jamie?
I guess it's sort of like where they cremate them straight away, and
pretty much, yeah. So, yeah, direct cremation is where a body is cremated immediately after death without a formal ceremony or pre-funeral events like viewings, etc. The family does not attend any services, and the remains are sent to them after the cremation. There are 0 witnesses to these direct cremations, and the family or next of kin will receive the remains either via collecting them in person on a pre-arranged date, having them delivered in person, or sent via secure post. So basically, the only cremations that Return to Nature claim that they would provide after July 2023 was direct cremation, where no service was held and no witnesses were present. Which is bizarre, since they had no contract with a crematory since in July 2023. So how would they do it? They certainly did something, because people were still sent their loved ones' remains.
So
or were they?
Somewhere. But...
Or were they?
Yeah.
That very same month, in July 2023, Return to Nature moved again to a new location at 944 Elton Drive in Colorado Springs. Now, this location was surrounded by several other businesses who didn't report anything unusual or suspicious going on at the property in the first couple of months that Return to Nature owned it. That wasn't until September of 2023, this year, when the people in the surrounding businesses began complaining of a putrid smell emanating from the area. Now, they hadn't pinpointed it where exactly it was coming from at first. Initially, workers thought it must have been the trash, but the smell continued to linger after the trash had been collected. This continued for over a week, until at one stage, a worker from a nearby business went to Jon himself to inquire about the smell. Jon's excuse for the putrid odour was that he was laser engraving the wooden caskets, and he claimed that was where the smell was coming from. But this was not the smell of burning wood. Jon promised to start ventilating the area, but the worker was not convinced. He did not think Jon's excuse of burning wood was an acceptable explanation. He knew that's not what he was smelling. He wasn't quite sure what it was, but he knew that it was not wood being burnt. We all know what burning wood smells like, and I think we could tell that it's not. If you smell something putrid that you think is trash or sewage, it's not burning wood.
Yeah, they're not even at all alike, are they?
So, on October the 1st, 2023, the Colorado Secretary of State declared Hallford Homes LLC delinquent. They had failed to file a periodic review form that had been due at the end of July 2023. The company also owed around $5,000 in unpaid property taxes for the Penrose location. But things were about to get so much more fucked up in regards to the Hallfords and Return to Nature.
So they are collecting the money for these things, for these services. So what's going on? And they're not paying nothing. Yeah.
They're making money off people.
They're making money off people.
Now, on October the 3rd, 2023, Fremont County Sheriff's Office received a report about an abhorrent odour coming from the Return to Nature property. And the actual report they made of it is on screen. I'm not going to read all that to you, but if you want to pause it and take a screenshot, have a read of that, feel free. I'm just going to give you a brief overview. So the director, the next day, this is October 3rd, the next day on the 4th of October, the director called Jon Hallford himself. And Jon told the director that he had a problem. I'll take that away now. You should have had time to screenshot it. So he says he had a problem at the Penrose property. Now, this is a different property for the one that initially were getting complained about the smell. This is a Penrose property.
This is problem. He lost his...
And he also claimed that he practiced taxidermy there. Now, Hallford agreed to meet at the property later that day so an inspection could be carried out. Sheriff's officers arrived at the property later that day armed with a search warrant and entered the premises. And that's where it all goes to shit. Upon arrival, it was noted that there was a hearse parked on a lot, and I've got some pictures. I've not got anything disturbing in the picture, so don't worry. So there was a hearse parked on the lot, and the building appeared to be in poor condition and was overgrown with weeds. It actually looked a little bit abandoned. It doesn't look like somewhere that you're going to go and think, oh, they look like a professional little business that's going to take care of my loved ones. This is a funeral home. It looks like shit.
It doesn't look like a funeral home, does it? Yeah.
When officers entered the premises, what they found was beyond horrific. On first estimates, they counted no less than 115 bodies, which had been improperly stored throughout the 2,500 square foot property. Some stacked on top of the other in different states of decomposition. This figure was later upped to an estimated 189. And still, this figure is not set in stone, as the remains were that degraded, it was difficult to determine where one body ended and another began. Now, without going into too much detail, because they were all piled on top of each other, it was an appalling scene. Some of these bodies were estimated to have been left in this condition for up to 4 years. Not just since November, when he lost his ability to cremate. 4 years. Just let that sink in. 4 years. Let that sink in about the people who had their loved ones, thought they'd been cremated or buried, and they've been sitting there for 4, or not there, because it looks like he moved them. He's moved them. That's what I was
going to say.
He's moved them. They weren't there originally. One officer actually developed a rash just by entering the facility and had to be taken to hospital for treatment. From this point on, the site was subject to hazmat protocols, obviously, and tents and barriers were erected around the property. That was to stop the public from witnessing what was going on, obviously, and to show respect for the deceased people and protect their families from further trauma.
So this is the bodies that they found at this one location?
This is just this one location, 180 bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a feeling that there's more somewhere else, and we don't know about it yet.
Yeah.
Because this is just...
Well,
this is just October. This is last month.
If he's been in the business for as long as he claims,
and some of these bodies have been there for 4 years.
I don't know.
It's just like... it's horrific. Absolutely and unforgivable. And those poor families.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even. Local and state officials were joined by FBI agents to investigate the scene. Governor Poulos gave a local disaster declaration. It was that bad. And teams who usually investigate things like aircraft crashes were called in to the Penrose location to help investigate the scene. Teams worked absolutely grueling 12-hour shifts sorting through this abhorrent mess. And they had to leave the building on average of every 40 minutes just to get a break from it and to get some air. Because you can't even begin to imagine what it smelled like in there as well.
It's probably affecting them emotionally as well, maybe.
This is like the start of October. This actually took until October the 21st for all the bodies to finally be removed from the property. That's how long it took. After which they were transported to the El Paso County Coroner's Office to be identified, which I believe they are actually still in the process of doing. I'm sure you can only begin to imagine it's no easy task, and I feel sorry for the people having to do it because it's horrific. And families are still being notified as and when identifications are being made. Authorities have also reached out to any former clients of the funeral home in order to try and speed up the identification process. Now, as of the time of this recording, just over 150 of those bodies have already been identified. So kudos to them. Because that wasn't easy. I can imagine that wasn't easy. Upon the discovery of these bodies on October the 5th, Return to Nature was issued with a cease and desist notice to stop practicing as a funeral home. On that day, John refused to let an investigator access the building, and he attempted to conceal the improper storage of human remains at that location. Wonder why? Over the following days, police secured warrants and gained entry to the other properties that they know of. I do think that there's more, because from what happened in Oklahoma, he was apparently concealing other properties. I do think there is other properties involved here that we are not aware of at this stage. That's just speculation now, so don't come for me. On October the 6th, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office held a press conference with the County Coroner, Randy Keller. Understandably, they didn't give much details. The media did ask, because it's the media and they do ask inappropriate questions. For instance, asking them to describe the scene. But they were met with the answer, I would not like to go into those details. It's a very tragic situation, and as I have stated, there are a lot of decedents there. but I don't really want to go into the scene itself out of respect for everyone, including the families that are going to be involved in this. And well done. But the media, imagine even asking what it looked like. I mean, really? Really? That's twisted. People who lived nearby the Penrose location were beyond shocked, obviously, when the news broke about this. They too, like the people at their location, had smelled a foul odour in the vicinity, and they'd assumed it was a dead animal or a faulty septic tank. Because your brain doesn't automatically go to, oh my God, there must be a ton of decaying human bodies in there, because that's horrific. And it's not normal, and nobody would ever contemplate that that's potentially the cause. Because you think people are more decent than that, and that wouldn't happen. So 2 weeks ago, on November the 7th, 2023, arrest warrants were issued for Jon and Carie Hallford.
Yeah.
Quite rightfully.
Yeah, a long time coming, I think.
In an arrest affidavit issued by the FBI, it states that the two stopped all communication with law enforcement and regulatory authorities in the beginning of October upon the discovery of the nearly 200 bodies at the Penrose location. This affidavit alleges unlawful flight to avoid prosecution.
Oh, so he tried to escape.
And it was filed by the FBI in Oklahoma, just ahead of them finally being arrested on the morning of Wednesday, October the 8th.
I'm glad they didn't get away. Flee the country.
Yeah, they didn't flee the country, but they fled to another state. According to the affidavit, Jon Hallford had been in contact with regulators about a horrific odour coming from the Penrose location, which is all included in that document I put up on the screen earlier. And they set up a time to open the building for inspection on October the 4th. That's when the police turned up with their search warrant. However, he failed to show up to the appointment. And this was the last communication that law enforcement had with Jon Hallford. He vanished because he knew he'd been caught. And also, they did break into their location where they smelled the smell previously, and there's no reports that they found any bodies there. So I'm thinking, again, just speculation, that there was bodies there, and he's moved them. He's moved them either to this Penrose location where they found these 189 bodies, roughly, or he's moved them somewhere else. But obviously, because people were complaining and somebody actually confronted him about the smell and he blamed the wood burning, he's moved them.
Yeah.
Now, I've got the next image is just the arrest warrant. And so obviously we know that a search warrant had been obtained for a property where officials found abhorrent conditions, including bodies dating back to 2019, which is just... And human decomposition fluids and insects were said to line the floors, according to the affidavit. I can't even know. These investigators must be so traumatized having to go in and deal with that. That's something that's going to stay. You're not going to get over that. You're not going to get over that. The FBI tracked the Hallford cell phones, tracking Carrie's phone to Oklahoma. Well, Jon seems to have left his phone off, conveniently.
Mm-hmm.
Agents conducted surveillance of his parents' home in Wagner, Oklahoma, where a vehicle registered to the Hallfords, as in Jon and Carie, not their parents, was seen in the driveway. Law enforcement officials did not disclose where or what agencies were involved in the arrest, but the couple was booked into the Muskogee County Jail, located half an hour south of Wagner.
Yeah.
4th Judicial District Attorney Michael Allen held a press conference on the Wednesday where he cautioned, this has just happened, affected families to manage their expectations of the now pending criminal case. So they're already telling them to manage their expectations, which pissed me off, really. Yeah. It's not his fault, but it's like they're already yeah. Now, the preliminary charges against the Hallford family include abuse of a corpse, theft, money laundering, and forgery, because they'd been forging the actual cremation documents that they gave to people, and saying that it went to this crematorium that didn't have nothing to do with them anymore.
They didn't.
They've been forging them.
Yeah.
Alan stated that the preliminary oh my god, I can't say words.
Preliminary
Charges could be subject to change prior to their first appearance, but also cautioned several times at the press conference that the penalties for the charged crimes include both prison time and probation. Basically, the penalties are a bit shit for what they've done.
I was going to say, I mean, yeah.
And
we'll get into that later, won't we? The penalties and punishments.
Yeah, and there's just a little... That's a letter for the Office of the District Attorney, just about them now being in custody. Again, if you want to read that, feel free. I'm not going to read it all to you because I've basically covered it. But if you want more information, feel free. So, they've been arrested, and just to cheer you up, there they are in their little orange jumpsuits.
He's even like posing like he's innocent, isn't he?
Oh, he probably thinks that he is innocent, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think
he's not responsible for anything. He's probably been a spoiled little shit and got away with everything his whole life. Yeah. Now, this bloke went on to say that in this press conference, these are low-level felonies, and that's why I mentioned they're subject to potential prison time based on the level of the felony. But there's also potentially an option for probation. That's something that I think people need to be aware of going forward, especially the family members, to set proper expectations as to what the level of charges are here and what the potential outcome could be. So they're already setting them up for
they are, yeah.
Disappointment. They're setting them up for disappointment already.
Lenient sentences. Yeah.
So Alan declined to comment on the possibility of individual charges being filed for each body, which probably isn't going to happen, and we'll explain why in a little while. Stating that his office still has to determine exactly what the charges would be filed against them, and that won't be determined until they're taken to Colorado, because they're still in Oklahoma at the moment. So even though he's not filed the charges yet, he's already preparing the families that they're going to be disappointed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they know, don't they? What's going to be like.
Yeah. So Alan was just one of many who spoke at the press conference, including Colorado Bureau of Investigation Director Chris Schaefer and Fremont County Sheriff Alan Cooper, who stated that arrest of Jon and Carie Hallford marked just the beginning of the case and that the investigation remains ongoing. Today is a very important step in this complex investigation, Schaefer said. There's a long ways to go in this investigation. The case continues, and we'll continue to collaborate with the District Attorney and with our local and federal partners. But they're really setting these people up for disappointment, and that's just so annoying. And it's not their fault. It is kind of their fault, because these are like the lawmakers and the government, and they should have things in place for shit like this. Yeah. If there's not anything to cover the magnitude of the crimes that these people have committed, then fucking create it.
I think obviously the laws are set in as they are, but like us doing this, and people like us will say we'll get out the word to people, and that might put pressure on. Yeah. I don't think we'll have obviously we can have a massive impact, but that all goes into like when you're all searching and you're watching these things and using these words, it all create interest, and people do analyze that, and hopefully that'll have some kind of impact.
Hopefully. Yeah. So as of the time of this recording, which is obviously the 21st of November 2023, Jon and Carie Hallford remain in Oklahoma at the Muskogee County Jail with a $2 million bail amount each, pending extradition to Colorado. Now, he's saying that the first court date in Colorado's 4th Judicial District Court won't be scheduled until the extradition process is complete. Obviously, that's not complete yet, so we don't know. We will, however, provide updates on this case as and when information becomes available. But at the moment, that's where we stand. Now, a couple of other things, though, because when we looked into this case, we went down loads of rabbit holes, and it's just that scary. So, before I get onto that, I'm not going to play any of the videos because it's quite upsetting and distressing. But I'll just go over some of this. Early reports and statements from former clients of Return to Nature indicate that the cremated remains that people were provided with and told was the remains of their loved ones are other substances, like powdered cement. Many families believed that these were their loved ones' remains and had services where they scattered their ashes at specific locations as per their loved ones' wishes, to only now discover that these were not their loved ones' remains at all, and that they have been left rotten in a as yet unknown location, because I do believe that they were moved, for up to 4 years, and that is just horrific. Horrific doesn't even cover it, does it, Jamie?
No.
I can't even begin to imagine the pain and the trauma that would cause. I just can't even. I just feel so bad for these people. When you receive an urn containing your loved one's ashes, nobody takes them out and inspects them. Nobody does that.
Not really, no. Unless you're scattering them, then you're going to take a look. But
why would you? Why would you take them out and inspect them? And even if you did take them out of the urn and inspect them, you wouldn't know what they were supposed to look like. I don't know what they're supposed to look like. It's just like grey powder. I don't know. And I wouldn't know if it looked weird or if it looked wrong. So how would anybody be able to tell that anyone was off? It's absolutely abhorrent that anyone would even consider doing something like this.
That's the same as the weight. You don't even know with the weight, do you? You don't know what.
No, you don't know how much it's supposed to weigh. You don't.
A body's weight is in
how
ashes.
Much the amount of ashes you get from a human, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just assume that these people are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
In one statement we came across from a former client, they shared that themselves and their daughter had taken a portion of their loved one's remains and had them mixed with ink that was then used in memorial tattoos. And to now face the possibility that they had an unknown substance, potentially fucking concrete, inserted into their body, it's fucking scary.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the medical implications of that?
Yeah.
Along with the fact that would have held so much meaning to these people for them to have what they felt was a part of their loved one with them, permanently with them, to discover that it's not. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Even also, like a lot of people will spend a lot of money on like jewelry with ashes.
Yeah, they'll get them put in jewelry or paperweights. And that's money
that they've paid for. That's again, I know payment isn't the important part, especially with what we've heard. But
I can't even.
They're still all.
I can't even wrap my head around.
Need to be taken into account, I think.
I can't even wrap my head around or begin to imagine the trauma that this is causing for these poor people.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. XB just said about, is there a death penalty still around in the USA? I don't know, but what I'm going to tell you, there's no way they're going to get a death penalty.
They're not going to get a death penalty.
Unfortunately, as you'll hear shortly.
Yeah, they're not going to get a death penalty. Maybe
you
should, but
the penalties are absolutely horrendously rubbish, is all I'll say. So
right, now before we get onto that part though, just something weird that we've got to include. Now I didn't think that this would lead into a missing persons case, but it did. Now, while researching this case, we came across something weird. Just typing random things associated with the case into like Google or Brave or whatever browser we were using, and we came across this thread. Now, it appears that Jon Hallford has a connection to a 2012 missing person case in Oklahoma, which occurred not long before he left Oklahoma and set up home in Colorado. Which is weird. It seems like this person went missing and then he left Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. And he
so apparently, because he had a good job offer, but he didn't stay in that area very long. And she was calling him Michael at the time. Remember that?
Mm.
He was using the name Michael, but now he's John. Yeah. So, there we go. I'm doing it all wrong. Right. Kelly Jean Harris was 48 years old when she went missing from Bixby in Oklahoma on July the 3rd, 2012. She was last sighted at a Walmart, where she was shopping for supplies for a 4th of July party that she was going to host the following day. Now, the day she went missing, she told her daughter that she was running out to Walmart to get some shopping or groceries or whatever you call them in your country, and then she was going to be stopping at her friend Michael's house. Now, none of Kelly's family knew this Michael person personally, just through word of mouth. They'd never met him.
No.
She'd spoke about him, but they'd never met him. Now, people assumed at the time, although this has never been confirmed, that law enforcement had spoken to and cleared whomever this Michael person was. However, shortly after Kelly's disappearance, a thread was started on the website Web Sleuths, in which people discuss the case. And throughout the older posts, the people are puzzling over the identity of this Michael person, asking questions like, was he cleared? She actually had over $800 on her, and he's the one that told police she had that money on her when she disappeared, because he said that he'd seen her. And they were puzzling over this. He said he'd give her that money. Anyway, all the older threads are just puzzling over who is Michael. We've not got a surname, we've got no information on him. Who is he? And nobody knew. And that was until June the 3rd, 2019, when a new user posted on that thread, and that new user was called Justice72. And here is that post here. Now, they're replying to a couple of the previous posts here. In the first part of the reply, they say, Jon Michael Hallford was not crystal clean. He had a record and owed a lot of money to people. The detective had told me he was also on drugs. In their second reply, they're saying, it's been about 6 to 7 years since you posted about her, meaning Kelly, but I'm new to this site and just came across this thread. I'm not sure how much to post in a public forum. I have some knowledge about the case and the Michael people are referring to. It's Jon Michael Hallford, who is around age 40 now. He was a co-worker of Kelly's, and after he got fired, she quit, and they were going to start a cleaning business together. I do know he owed people a lot of money, and he did drugs. At work, though, he came across as a trustworthy person to the point that he was able to take advantage of one of the other co-workers who was disabled and had learning difficulties. He was able to talk her out of approximately $10,000 in 401k money. Apparently, on the night Kelly disappeared, she went to see him to get money from him for the cleaning business. Now, that's obviously the $800 that this Michael person had told police that she had on her at the time of her disappearance. So, she was never seen again, as we know. It's interesting that he was involved in his family's funeral and cremation business. And they've wrote in brackets, Sittler/Halford. Now, I don't know if that's the name of their cremation company. The police did consider him a suspect, but could never find hard evidence. He's now living in Colorado, going by John. And a couple of years ago, started another funeral business there with his new wife and her 3 young kids. Poor Kelly. So that's that. And then we get to...
This could have been a catalyst to the sort of thing afterwards.
There's no more responses after that until February 2021, when another new member called SMummy3 posted on that same thread. And that is that post. And I'll read that one to you. Another new member. Hello, I am new to this site. SIGHT. No points for spelling, but whatever. Kelly was a friend of mine. We worked together for a couple of years. A lot of what you have stated here is correct. I find it interesting that Michael's parents own a crematory. The detectives don't think pursued this much. I miss Kelly so much. There's no way she would have left her kids or husband. I knew that her and her husband had a good marriage. He was a hard worker at American Airlines for years. He took good care of Kelly. I think it all stems back to Michael. I think that's where the police need to shift their focus. Prayers the family get some answers. And then, there's no more. Again, that's February the 22nd, 2021. The next post will be on January 19th of this year. That's 2023. And that's this. Somebody else, another new user called Justin Case 12. I'm very curious why Michael was never investigated. Did he have an alibi for that night? I'm concluding from the reports he was the last person to see her alive, and he was the one who claimed that she had the cash on her. Seems very odd that he wasn't fully investigated, especially knowing he had access to a crematory. Did investigators know that detail at the time?
It's quite similar to the other name. Are they?
And
It's
then
probably the same person, maybe. Or
there's no more on that thread until obviously the discovery of what happened in Colorado at the beginning of October, when people are like, "Oh my God, he's just been just found 180 bodies in Colorado at his funeral home," and it's weird. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
So
it make you think, doesn't it?
Now these are all like, it is a bit bizarre that all the posts on there that talk about Michael and actually naming him as Jon Michael Hallford are from brand new accounts who do not appear to have posted before or since they've made these comments. However, even if we take into account that this is the same person that's posting and then coming back making a new account a couple of years later, there's still somebody who way before Jon Michael Hallford was known for his abhorrent crimes committed in Colorado, someone tied him to this case as the Michael that Kelly was visiting that day.
Yeah.
Somebody that had information about like the background of her husband and like things like he was an ex-work colleague. They had information. They had more, and there's like they're making out like they know more and they don't want to post it publicly, but they know things, and they are saying that this Michael was him. And the fact that this woman's body has now been found, they're mentioning that, and they felt it necessary to point out that his family had a crematory, which is quite scary. Like, is that what happened to her? This really needs to be investigated, though, because this bloke is fucking dodgy. Really, he's dodgy, and
I can see it happening.
If he was supposed to be own her money for this cleaning business, and she'd gone to come collecting. Did something go wrong? Did things get heated?
Was the business ever going to happen? Was it just a way of getting
was it
money?
a fraud? Was it a fraud? Was he just trying to con money out of her?
He seemed to have
like
done all the way.
According to this person, he conned money out of another work colleague. Who knows what happened? But this woman is missing, and her family needs answers. And if he is that person, considering what we know now about him, this needs to be looked into.
They should follow all leads, especially now. Like I say, they should be searched. I hope they search all these other properties that he's owned previously as well. But I don't know.
There's been no coverage of this part in the mainstream media whatsoever. But if we could find it, then they could find it. If we could find it by looking on Google and putting his name in and putting the name of his funeral company in and come across this thread, then the police can find it and the media can find it. So why is it not being talked about? This needs to be talked about. This woman's family need answers.
Obviously, they'd have to line up all the dates and make sure they all check out and that with their statements, because that could be just someone hating on him who's, heard about this, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But they seem to have a lot of information there.
Yeah, so that's something that should be looked into. Now, before we get on to the next part, I just want to quickly mention at the beginning, when we're telling you about the Return to Nature being founded in 2017 and being opened, we told you that it was opened by Jon Hallford, Carie Hallford, and their friend. Now, not much has been stated in the media, or anywhere, really, about the previous co-owner of Return to Nature. From what we can ascertain at this juncture, this might change as more things come to light, John Jack Doogie spoke to the Associated Press in early October, not long after this discovery. And he confirmed that he retired more than a year ago. So from the beginning of October, he's saying it was over a year ago that he retired. So at least he's not had any dealings with this business since at least October of 2022. He stated to the AP that at that time, everything was perfect, adding that the Hallfords, who previously ran an Oklahoma funeral home, which is bullshit because they didn't, his parents did, he didn't, had treated the clients with dignity and respect. Mr. Doogie has not been arrested at this point, and very little has been mentioned about him. However, there are unanswered questions about his level of involvement. Whereas the loss of licensing and the issues with rent payments and payments to contractors, etc., only seemingly appeared to come to light after his retirement, it should be noted that many of the bodies discovered had been improperly stored by this business for up to 4 years. He was a partner in that business for 3 of those 4 years. So one would imagine that he has got some level of responsibility for the treatment and the care of those remains that were put into the care of a business that he was part owner of over that 3-year period. He's not responsible for anything that happened since he retired just over a year ago, but bodies for 2019, oh yes he is, in my opinion, don't come for me.
Well, he's trying to make it out that sound like it
was fine. It was all fine a year ago. And then he left and it all went to shit a year ago. No, it didn't.
No, it didn't. Just look at the other business practices over the years where they're not paying this and they're not paying that.
And then constantly moving location as well while he was the business partner. Now, whether the investigation proceeds and charges are filed against this gentleman remains to be seen, or whether further evidence comes to light which negates any responsibility on his part, we can't say at this stage due to the lack of information surrounding this third owner. Yeah. So it's difficult to ascertain why he's not being held in any way liable at this juncture. But if he's not, then tell us why he's not, because he should.
Yeah.
Because it's been going on for 4 years. Yeah. He should be.
Unless his particular role, it was clear that his particular role or his participation in the actual business.
Was he a silent partner? I mean, did he not really?
Yeah,
I don't know.
That could be possible where he didn't really have nothing to do. Maybe he was a money guy. Perhaps he was just, giving them money or funding them or doing something, something that he wouldn't notice what was going on and things. You don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure that things will come to light more as well. But
now, something else that we discovered that blew my mind. I was like, what? Colorado. That's all happened in Colorado. Colorado's funeral industry was deregulated in 1983. It's now the only state in the United States where that's the case. That means that anyone can decide to be a funeral director in Colorado. You didn't need a license to do so. One day, you could be happily stacking the shelves up in your local Walmart or Kmart or wherever, and the next day, decide that you want to be a funeral director with no experience, no training, no qualifications, and no clue about what that entails. And in Colorado, that's fine. Which is like, what? Really? Colorado has thus become a kind of bizarre dumping ground for funeral directors who, for one reason or another, have lost their licenses in other states. They can go to Colorado and they can do whatever the fuck they want. It's beyond ludicrous, in my opinion, that in the state of Colorado, you can actually be fined if you give somebody a manicure or a pedicure without a license. You get fined. That's like, how dare you? How dare you touch somebody's nails without a license?
Yeah.
But you can go to a location and pick up a deceased human body who may potentially have an infectious disease and not have a bloody clue what you're doing or how to appropriately handle those remains safely, and that's okay. But don't you dare give somebody a manicure without a license. What the fuck's going on in Colorado? In 2009, the legislature in Colorado passed a law in which the actual funeral homes themselves have to be registered with the state. But the people that work inside them don't have to be licensed or registered at all. Could be anybody. They don't have to have any training. There's no one to hold them to account. There are no regulations in place that they have to follow. And for 2023, that's fucking ridiculous. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. But sadly, even though all the other states throughout the United States do require licensing, it doesn't mean that they're devoid of horrendous stories like this one. You would think it did, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And when we begin looking into this and started researching, we didn't even begin to imagine the fucking rabbit hole that we were going to fall down.
In fact, when we started the research, it was like, oh, don't worry, this doesn't happen. This is very rare. This is never happened. This, this and that. And actually, yeah, that's not quite what we found, is it,
Yeah.
Lisa?
We thought, it'll be fine in all the other states. Yeah. No. So, unfortunately, the return to nature story is not a one-off. And it's just one of many that have been reported in recent years, especially throughout the United States. There are far too many to go over in their entirety. We'd be here for weeks, not even all day, weeks. Yeah. That's how bad it is. But we will give you a brief overview of some of the cases that have come to the public light, some historical ones and some in recent years, to give you a better understanding of the gravity of this problem. And it is a fucking problem. Despite there being licensing in all of the other states, it's clearly not enough. It's not enough. Something is fundamentally wrong with the system for funeral services in the United States. Now, I've not looked into other countries, so I'm not singling out the United States. That's something that I might look into at another stage, but that's just going to be too distressing at the moment. But in the United States, because that's where this case was, and this is current, something is wrong. There's clearly not enough training, there's not enough education, there's not enough legislation, safeguarding, or regulating
inspections, I guess,
on this industry, and that's led to massive problems, massive betrayals of trust, and frankly, the most abhorrent of crimes. And it is crimes. There's no other word for it. It's criminal. Absolute criminal.
They're not just crimes, they are horrendous crimes, and I don't think they've been classed.
They're not getting classed as what they should be.
Should be, no. I think that's terrible.
Now, the media, each time a new case comes to light, and we've read all these reports, and we've been over so many, but every new case, they make a note of telling you that this is rare.
Yeah, like I said.
But shockingly, the more and more it occurs, the less rare it becomes. There is no shortage of unscrupulous and, quite frankly, fucking evil people willing to take advantage of people in the most vulnerable moments of their lives, when they're grieving the loss of a loved one. And they're not only taking advantage of that, often for financial gain, which is often the case, they're heinously lacking any and all empathy, with zero respect or care for the precious remains of loved ones that have been entrusted to them in the hopes that they'll be treated with dignity and respect, and they're failing them. On the occasion where these people have been caught, and I do not doubt for a second that there are probably many more out there right now doing the exact same things that have not been caught yet, the punishments that they receive are, quite frankly, pathetic. Pathetic.
They are terrible.
Showing a severe lack of any proper laws being put in place to deter such abhorrent behaviours. It'll be interesting to see the punishment, or lack thereof, given to the Hallfords as this case progresses. Mm-hmm. Because the things they're being charged with carry very little penalties.
Very little.
Very little.
Yeah.
And they do not even begin to cover the scope of the abhorrent things that they have done, and the level of trauma and heartache that they've inflicted upon these families. 180 families. Mm. Well, even more than that, because you've got the friends and anybody that knew them.
It all escalates to different people, and everyone's affected. It is more than what you imagine, really.
If no law exists to cover crimes, because of crimes, I'm going to keep calling them crimes, such as these, then at which point do we sit here and see similar things happen over and over and over again before we say, wait a fucking minute, stop the bus. Maybe we need a new law. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need something that's not only on a state level, but across the board on a federal level, with suitable punishments for these horrific crimes as a deterrent for carrying out these barbaric practices for their own financial gain. If it doesn't exist, but it's a continuing problem, it needs to exist.
So laws do seem to, because let's be honest, a sort of business that can be exploited, because no one can see you only see one half of it. You only see the little people in suits who saying, we can do this for you, we can do that for you.
In many of the cases, when they do inspections, and a lot of these states,
people know that they're coming.
They tell them in advance, we're coming to inspect you a week on Thursday.
Yeah, when I worked.
So obviously when they turn up, it's all fucking brilliant.
When I worked in a restaurant, we used to get warned when they were coming, so you know.
So, just as a brief overview, and this isn't even the tip of the iceberg. We're going to just tell you a little bit about some similar cases. And I was surprised, shocked at how many there are. That's
horrified.
First up, the Sunset Mesa funeral directors in Colorado. This is also in Colorado. On January 3rd, 2013, the United States Attorney's Office for the state of Denver announced that the operators of the Sunset Mesa Funeral Home in Montrose, Colorado, were sentenced to federal prison for illegally selling body parts or entire bodies without the consent of the family of the deceased. Megan Hess, age 46, was sentenced to 20 years in prison after pleading guilty to one count of mail fraud and aiding and abetting. Now, they had to get her on mail fraud. Just bear that in mind. Now, this is probably the harshest sentence that we got, but they had to get her on mail fraud.
And that's probably really the mail fraud part.
That's the mail fraud
component, which is probably
that's why she got 20 years.
Yeah.
Our mother, Shirley Koch, age 69, was sentenced to 15 years for the same thing, mail fraud and aiding and abetting. Now, according to a plea agreement from 2010 through to 2018, the pair stole bodies or body parts of hundreds of victims and then sold the remains through body broker services, which is, I didn't even know was a thing.
No.
Apparently it's legal. It's a legal thing, in Colorado at least, to have a body broker service. But it's not legal to do it without consent, which they've done. So on behalf of the Sunset Mesa funeral directors, Megan Hess and Shirley Koch would frequently meet with victims seeking cremation services for themselves or their loved ones who had passed away. During these meetings, the pair would assure clients that Sunset Mesa funeral directors would cremate decedents and provide the cremated remains to the families. Instead, the duo would harvest body parts from or prepare the entire bodies of the decedents for sale to body broker services. They were selling the fucking bodies.
And like I said, they were preparing them as well to be sold. So if they weren't being sold in their entirety...
It gets worse though. In many instances, Koch and Hess neither discussed nor obtained authorization for the donation of the bodies to broker services. In other instances, the topic of donation was raised by them to the families and it was rejected by the families, but they just ignored that and did it anyway. In some cases, in a few cases, the families did agree to minimal samples, in which case it's often like a tissue sample or a tumour for research purposes. They get permission for that, but they took it way further than that and often would harvest a hell of a lot more or the entire body and send it to these services. Now, according to their plea agreements, Hess and Koch would also ship bodies and body parts that tested positive for or belonging to people who had died from infectious diseases, including hepatitis C, hepatitis B, and HIV, after certifying to the buyers that the remains were disease-free. These shipments, These shipments would be sent through the mail or on commercial air flights in violation of the Department of Transportation regulations regarding the transportation of hazardous materials. Now, that's why it was the mail thing, and that's why they got 15 years and 20 years respectively.
Yeah, because of the health and safety.
Because they done it through the mail.
Yeah. Not actually what they did in their carelessness and heartlessness, just actually the methods they used.
So, yeah, and that's them two bitches. That's Megan Hess and her mother. Disgusting human beings. Absolutely disgusting. Next up, going to Los Angeles. This is the Mark B. Allen Funeral Home in Los Angeles. Doesn't look much to look at here, really. No. I wouldn't think, oh, that looked nice, I'm going to go in there. No, but whatever. In March of 2022, authorities in Sun Valley, Los Angeles investigated the Mark B. Allen Funeral Home after receiving complaints from families using the funeral home and from residents living near the funeral home. These complaints varied from strange odours, you know where this is going, don't you, to swarms of flies around the building, to the director refusing to allow family members to visit their deceased loved ones on the premises. Investigators discovered the non-cremated remains of 11 people, including infants. They were found in various stages of decomposition. The temperature of the unit housing these bodies was a staggering 60 degrees. So you can imagine.
It looks a bit crap, yeah, it does.
How horrific. And you're storing human remains in an area that's 60 degrees. Oh my God. Alan was facing 11 years in prison and $110,000 in fines. That's $10,000 for each body and 1 year in prison for each body as well. So there's been no outcome as yet, though. I'm not expecting much.
No, I'm not expecting that. Not what we.
When we get into the next ones, you'll see why. Now they're looking at like per body. That's not. I don't think that's going to happen.
That's the way, like we had. That's what they suggested earlier.
That's the way it should happen.
That would lead to better sentences, but obviously, that's not going to happen.
So this is still ongoing. So there's been no verdict in that case as of yet. And the Lamb Funeral Home. This one looks quite pretty. Like, oh yeah, that looks quite a nice little place. Not though. This was in 1987. After an inspection, it was discovered that a man called Jerry Sconce and his wife, Lorianne Lamb Sconce, of the California Coastal Cremations Incorporated, aka the Lamb Funeral Home, were cremating bodies en masse. It's actually illegal, common sense as well, not to cremate more than one body at once. But these people were cremating up to 20 at a time. 20. In a building posing as a ceramic shop. And they were using a ceramic kiln to do so. The ashes were then just piled up outside in the yard of the Lamb Funeral Home. And disgustingly, when the families of the deceased came to collect their loved one's ashes, one of the employees would just go out the back and they had a scale and they had a certain measurement for men, a certain measurement for women, and a certain measurement for children. They weighed out a portion of these ashes and just gave them a mix of God knows who. Disgusting. Because it was all about the money. Getting as many cremations done as possible, more money.
Yeah.
It was also discovered that before the mass cremations had taken place, the gold teeth, tissue, organs, and other body parts were removed to be sold. Even more barbarically, he was using things like screwdrivers, hammers, scissors, and other household items in order to collect these items from the bodies. The perpetrators were sentenced to a mere 3 years for these horrendous crimes.
3 years.
However, the families did sue the shit out of them.
Yeah.
For a total of $15 million, which left them penniless. But 3 years. 3 years.
Yeah. I believe this is the one where the guy was even hiding like parts. He had a rented accommodation. He was hiding body parts that didn't burn under the floor space and things like that. I think that's the one, isn't it? Yeah. And there is a little bit more of a history with that, and he done more crimes as well. And this is the sort of
he's actually suspected of a murder as well, but that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah, that there's a big story about him and his family and things. But obviously we can't cover that.
The next one, I ain't got a picture of the funeral home, but I've got a picture of a sheriff's investigator on the sign from one of the newspapers at the time. This is the Morning Glory Funeral Home in Florida, and I'm not going to make a joke about Morning Glory because it's not the subject to make a joke, but the Morning Glory Funeral Home scandal took place at the Howell Morning Glory Chapel in Jacksonville, Florida in 1988, and involved improper disposal and burial of bodies by the funeral home's owner, a Lewis J. Howell. Investigation eventually revealed bodies stacked in the funeral home without preservation or refrigeration, and multiple bodies buried inside a single casket.
Very similar again.
The scandal first came to light on June the 7th, 1988, when a number of decomposing bodies were found inside the funeral home, a total of 36 bodies, including one fetus. And 3 sets of body parts were uncovered inside the building. Most of the corpses were stacked in a closet, and some had been in the building for as long as a decade. A decade. Later, 3 caskets buried by the funeral home at Hillside Cemetery were exhumed and found to contain a total of 8 bodies and a bag of mixed bones. That's a quote.
So that could be anything.
That could be anything. That could be any number of people. So there's 8 bodies and a bag of mixed bones, which God knows what that even means, don't you? The case was investigated by the Duval County Medical Examiner's Office, headed by Chief Medical Examiner Peter Lipkovic. Howell was convicted of felony grand theft for accepting money for funerals that were not performed. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison, but served just over 2 months and was released in February 1989. What the fuck?
See what I mean?
What the
See
fuck
what
is
I mean
that?
about census? And this is further back, and we've got more to come. I think this is another case where they were using cement again, and then things like that. So similar sort of tricks.
Now, Georgia. That'll give you an indication of what's going to happen in Georgia. The tri-state crematory scandal happened at a crematorium in the Noble community in northwest Georgia, and it came to national attention in 2002. Nearly 340 bodies that had been consigned to the crematory for proper disposition were discovered to have never been cremated, but instead dumped at several locations in and around the site. This led to civil litigation and criminal prosecutions. Families of the deceased were given concrete dust instead of cremated remains. So I wonder where this bloke, that in this case we're talking about, got the idea from.
Yeah.
Ray Brent Marsh was given hundreds of charges and was facing a sentence of thousands of years. However, he only received 12 years, which is a far cry from the prediction.
Yeah.
How it went from, when you stack up all the charges, thousands of years to 12 years. Yeah. I don't know how that happened.
And that's actually still quite a long sentence in comparison to what we'll hear from all of these.
It was more than some people got for similar crimes. It was speculated in the aftermath of his conviction that Ray may have been suffering from Mad Hatter's disease.
Well, certainly mad. I agree
which I call bullshit, but we'll get to why. This is a neurological disorder that people that used to make hats got back in the day. And it stems from exposure to mercury. It was put forward that by cremating bodies with mercury fillings, it had an effect on Ray. But I'm not buying that. Buying that. I didn't buy it. I think it's bullshit. I think it's an excuse. Tens of thousands, maybe even more. I don't know how many funeral directors there are in the world, have probably disposed of human remains that had mercury.
Same conditions.
In them. And they didn't do this.
No.
But he did.
No excuse.
And over his tenure as the person that done the cremations, he had handled over 2,000 bodies, and he managed to cremate at least 1,700. So I'm going to cite laziness as a reason that he didn't do the other 300, not fucking some disease that is from way back in the day. Bullshit.
Yeah, I'm not buying that. All scrap. No.
The next one, we're nearly done. Don't worry. There is we could have went on forever, but the next one, Swanson Funeral Home. This is in Michigan. In 2017, bodies were discovered in an unair-conditioned garage for the Americans, at the Swanson Funeral Home in Flint, Michigan. The bodies were rotten in the heat and they'd been there for at least 5 months. The location was also selling prepaid funeral plans without a proper licence. These grievous actions were committed by O'Neill Swanson II. That's important, the second part. And his licence was suspended, after which his father, Dr. O'Neill D. Swanson, who actually owns a chain of funeral homes throughout Detroit, denounced his son and disowned him. So he's disowned him for his shocking treatment of the bodies in the care. The Detroit funeral homes, Swanson Funeral Homes, were not involved in this scandal. It was just the Flint location that was being run by his son.
Yeah.
And the Detroit locations are actually still in business today. This was in 2017 it happened with his son. Now, in 2019, 58-year-old O'Neill Swanson II pleaded no contest to 2 felonies. Now, a no contest plea means that he's not admitting his guilt, but it's treated as such at sentencing. Yeah. But he's not saying he's guilty.
I'm not going to challenge it.
He's just not challenging it. I'm not saying I'm guilty, though, but I'm not challenging it. He received an 11-month delayed sentence and was ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $75,000. It was ordered that if he paid restitution by the end of that 11-month period, that the additional felony charge against him would be dismissed. Now, there's been no further news on it, so I'm assuming that he did pay that, so the other felony charge was dismissed, and he served no time in prison, nothing. So he got away with it, basically.
Yeah, and he's obviously made enough money.
He made more
than doing what he was supposed to be getting paid.
He's made more than £75,000 by conning people.
Yeah.
So still in Michigan, because there was there was a little cluster that happened in Michigan all around at the same time, and it's weird. So next one, Perry Funeral Home, Michigan. In 2018. Fetuses and infant remains, 63 in total.
These next two, if it's the next one, they're quite bad as well, aren't they?
So 63 in total were discovered in and around the Perry Funeral Home in Detroit. They'd been dumped in boxes and left to decay and rot. The funeral home had claimed that they had buried the remains, so they were charged with mishandling over 200 infant and fetal remains. Why it was just the infants? The home had been warned before about piling bodies into cooling drawers intended for only one cadaver. So apparently, shoving them into boxes was a solution to this, because they'd been told not to put them into a drawer, so they just shoved them in boxes.
Mm-hmm.
What the... I can't even.
No. Shocking.
Cantrell Funerals in Michigan, again in 2018, again in Michigan.
Yeah.
Cantrell Funerals in Detroit was discovered to have hundreds of moulding infant bodies just lying around the building. 11 of these bodies were discovered stuffed in the ceiling. Excuse me.
Why? How? Who?
Stuffed in the ceiling.
Yeah.
They'd actually made a false ceiling so they can put more bodies up there. What the fuck's wrong with people? Yeah. It was actually the Perry one that led them here.
Yeah.
There was a connection. But
that's why they're both in Michigan, and I think they're both
What are these people doing?
Yeah, I think why they were infants as well, I think that was related to some kind of research university or something, and they were sending them their bodies, obviously, and things like that to dispose of correctly, and that's what they were doing, is stuffing them up the ceiling, and things like that.
Yeah. But never fear, because there's fucking more. Another one that looks quite nice on the outside, really. Sangamon County Coroner Jim Allman first announced an investigation into the Hines Funeral Home in Illinois, which comes under the Family Care Cremations LLC, in late September this year. So this is ongoing as well. The Carlinville Funeral Home is accused of providing families with ashes when no cremation took place. I'm seeing a theme here.
Yeah.
In at least one instance, they cremated a person under a different name, and allowed 3 bodies to decompose in an unrefrigerated setting. No criminal charges have been filed against the funeral home or any of its owners or employees. However, the authorities have now recovered more than 60 sets of remains which appear to have been given to the wrong families.
Mm-hmm.
He said that the numbers are ever-changing. Allman said that he has been speaking to state lawmakers about the laws in place to protect human remains from being mistreated. He wants to reinforce laws already on the books or create new ones that would make actions like those being investigated not only unethical and immoral, but illegal, and quite rightly.
Yeah.
Illinois State Police is conducting its own investigation, but Allman believes some of the alleged actions would not have criminal culpability attached to them. He's quoted as saying, "We shouldn't all be left scratching our heads wondering if he broke any laws or not when you hear about these things." And I agree.
Yeah.
There should be no doubt about it that they broke the law.
It's terrible, isn't it? It's really terrible.
Now, New York. In January 2022, a family's unanswered calls to a funeral home owner about their requested cremation services led the police to discover multiple decomposing bodies and cremated remains throughout the property and stored in a garage. For Americans, garage. It turned out the owner's funeral director license was suspended and the funeral home was never licensed to begin with. So what's the point in fucking having them? What's the point in having them? Brian M. Barnett was illegally running this funeral home in Johnstown, which is situated 45 miles northwest of Albany in New York. After finally turning himself in a month later, he was charged with 3 counts of concealment of a human corpse, 1 count of 4th-degree grand larceny, 1 count of 3rd-degree grand larceny, 3 counts of failing to bury a body within a reasonable amount of time, 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. I don't know where that came into it. Maybe there was a child on the property. I don't know.
Health and safety again.
1 count of operating a funeral home without a license and 4 counts of operating a funeral director without a license. He was sentenced to between 2.5 and 7 years in prison for his crimes in June of this year.
Right.
Pathetic.
Between 2 and 7 years.
Pathetic.
That's strange. Yeah.
Pathetic.
That is. But again, still a little bit longer than some of these.
And in 2014, authorities discovered 8 bodies lying on gurneys in an unrefrigerated room.
Yeah,
with
that's just
buckets,
disgusting, everybody.
Buckets placed underneath them, collecting bodily fluids as they decomposed.
It's at that point when you say, I need to do something about this. I mean, you should know about this before, but I don't know what's going on with all this unrefrigerated units and stuffing them in rooms. There's got to be something.
Saving electricity, Jamie.
It must be the cost of living, perhaps.
This is in Texas, by the way. It's Johnson's family mortuary. Amongst this, 2 infant bodies were found. One had been dead for 2 years, and they'd been basically left to melt in the heat. The owners, Rachel Hardy Johnson and her husband, Dondre Johnson, along with his twin brother, Derek, had been paid to cremate these bodies. However, they took the payments but failed to carry out the cremations.
Mm-hmm.
The funeral home actually had no licensed funeral director in its employ and should not have been running at all. The owner, Rachel Johnson, had received a letter from regulators a month before the gruesome discoveries, telling her that she must cease and desist any and all acts of funeral directing and or embalming immediately. She didn't. And a letter, I mean, why not go out there and shut them down?
Yeah.
Tough them out. A letter? Really? And like, why did it take a month after that? In June 2015, Rachel Hardy was sentenced to 21 months. But not for that. Oh, no. That 21 months was for receiving federal benefits illegally.
So you can see where their priorities are then.
Not for abuse of a corpse or running a business without a license. It was like, oh, she got some food stamps illegally.
Yeah.
Her husband, Dondre, was charged with theft that same year. Again, not anything to do with abusing a corpse or theft. And he was fined $10,000 and sentenced to 2 years in prison. According to media reports, both were still awaiting prosecution for misdemeanor abuse of a corpse charges. However, the next media report in this case, considering it happened in 2014, the next media report is in 2018. So, 4 years later, and it states that Dondre Johnson had his theft conviction, the only thing he was convicted for, overturned due to an apparent lack of evidence. I'd say there was loads of evidence that he stole fucking money off people because they'd been paying him to cremate their loved ones and he'd not done it. So that's stealing, that's theft. So where's the lack of evidence? Both convictions were changed to acquittals. No, he's done nothing wrong. He was sentenced to 1 year for abuse of a corpse. Johnson is quoted as saying, and this is fucking sick, this is what he said: "We've done nothing wrong. This is a funeral home. That's where dead bodies belong." What?
Yeah.
These people, I swear to God, oh my God. No, it's not. No, it's not. Dead bodies belong either buried in the plot that their family paid for to bury them in, or they belong in possession of the family so that they can go with their wishes and either put them on the mantelpiece or take them to a specific location to scatter their ashes. That is where they belong. They don't belong sitting in a hot garage for years. That's not where they belong. Arsehole.
Exactly.
Sorry.
It's for dollars because, like I said, I said about cost of living, but I mean, God,
that's arsehole who made that statement, and his wife. Yeah. Stand-up citizens right there. Arkansas funeral care. Just when you thought, oh, there can't be any more. There's loads.
Yeah.
In 2015, in Arkansas Funeral Home LLC was discovered in a state very much the same as all the other ones that we've spoke about. I don't need to go into detail. Poor storage, improper handling, no air conditioning, piled bodies.
Same thing again.
Piled bodies.
Money.
Same thing.
These services are bloody expensive, even for a so-called budget one or a pauper's one. They're dear. They're quite dear, aren't they? Yet here we are. They can't even turn the bloody fridges on or refrigeration units.
I don't need to go into detail. I think you've got the picture of what these people are doing or not doing. Pulaski County Judge Chris Piazza fined Arkansas Funeral Care LLC. So he's fined the LLC $10,000 for each of the 5 counts against the funeral home, totaling $50,000 in fines, which is fair enough. Now, Leroy Wood and Rodney Wood, who were the ones that done this shit, had each initially faced 13 counts each of abuse of a corpse. But the criminal charges filed against them were dropped and were levied against the Arkansas Funeral Care LLC instead. So all that happened was they got a fine of $50,000. That's it. No prison time, no criminal record, nothing.
That's good to point out right now. Like we had all these there's some hefty fines. However, we know that these bloody people do not pay. I mean, this John person who we were talking about at the start, he weren't paying none of his bills. So why is he going to pay these fines?
And this annoyed me as well. They're saying Arkansas Funeral Care, exclusive provider of veterans funeral care. Stay away from the veterans. Yeah. Just stay away from everybody. But really. Mm-hmm. I'm so annoyed, and I where did Jamie go? There he is. I'm so annoyed.
She was so annoyed she put me away.
I'm so annoyed.
Yeah.
There are many more.
Yeah. There is many more. Yeah. There's
too many. There's far too many. Too many for this show, and too many in general, in our opinion. It doesn't just stop at funeral homes, though. Crimes are being committed throughout the business of caring for our loved ones after their death.
Well, we're saying money fraud is one of it, and
it's not just funeral homes. In one case, a funeral director took pleasure in taking pictures of the deceased in her care, and then sharing these pictures with her friends on social media platforms, attaching to these pictures sick comments that she found to be fucking hilarious. She did lose her license, and as a punishment, she got 250 hours community service. Naughty. 250 hours. Really?
terrible, isn't it?
And then this. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse. It fucking does.
It does, yeah.
In Cincinnati, in Ohio, in 2009, an employee at Hamilton County Morgue, so this is a county morgue, Kenneth Douglas, was arrested. Why? Why was he arrested? You couldn't even guess why he was arrested.
No.
His DNA was discovered. Sorry, this is terrible. His DNA was discovered on the almost decapitated body of a teenage murder victim from way back in 1982. He admitted that he had sexually assaulted that corpse.
Obviously, they must have re-examined the body or something. Collected. Oh, I don't know.
It was an appeal for the guy. The guy had killed her. She was a murder victim, but he was actually on death row because of the sexual nature of the crime. But it turned out that he didn't actually commit the sexual nature of the crime. He did murder her.
Yeah.
But he actually got his death sentence reduced to a life sentence because it was actually she was sexually assaulted after death. But it gets worse. He later went on to confess that he had, in his words, which is fucking sick, he said that he had, I didn't want to say it, made love, I feel sick, to at least 100 other corpses in his, during his time that he was employed at the morgue. He said that he would hold parties with drugs and alcohol whilst he sexually assaulted the corpses.
If he's holding parties, there must have been other people involved as well.
People had to fucking know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
100 times he done that. Like, people fucking, like, really?
Yeah.
Now, for this, he got 3 years.
3 years. See? This is what I'm saying. There's going to be no
3 years.
Death penalties or life sentences.
Now, I looked this up. This happened in 2009. Obviously, he was found out in 2009. Yeah. It had been going on since at least 1982. I looked this up. In Ohio, the criminal penalty for abuse of a corpse is only a year. It's not a lot, really. It should be more. That's not acceptable. However, this man abused over 100 corpses by his own admission. So 3 years falls a good fucking 97 years too short, in my opinion.
Exactly.
What the fuck? 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Should have got charged for each one that he admitted to. He's actually confessing that's what he done. So he should do the crime.
Where's the other 97 years?
Uh-huh. There you go.
He put a man on death row, even though the man...
Yeah, as well.
The man did murder somebody.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
But he put a man on death row because the sexual element made it a death penalty case. You put a man on death row, that man could have been killed. Even though he's a murderer and not fucking...
Yeah. No, I know it's an awkward one, but yeah, you're right.
Really?
Yeah.
That's just... Yeah, this was hard. And that's only the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't.
No, there was more and more.
There's so many. And just in case you wondered... Probably didn't. But,
probably didn't anyway.
That's the last sicko we were talking about.
Yeah.
They got 3 years. Okay,
yeah.
You can fuck off. I'm just disgusted. I'm disgusted. I'm absolutely disgusted. And there's something fundamentally wrong in the United States. Maybe in other countries. I don't know. Yeah. I've not looked into it. I don't want to look into it. I'm traumatized for looking into America.
Yeah. Well, look, there has been stories in the UK, but I mean, that is a bit more.
This needs to change.
Rare, but then it's a small place. But look, anything will call. There should be respect in it. There's still, even though we're saying that these people have passed on and things like that, but are still emotionally, there's all these different people that's going to affect emotionally.
This needs to change
permanently for their lives. And look, these tattoos and things like that they're putting in them, they're putting bloody cement in them. That's got to have an effect as well. There's so many different avenues.
What are the medical ramifications from having cement put into your bloodstream?
Yeah.
It's just unacceptable.
There's reasons.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously reasons why it does seem like we had a bit of a ramp up recently. I mean, I can imagine probably why. But, I mean, the thing is, if there's obviously certain issues going on there. I know it's money grabbing and things like that. But, like, why did this person, one of the person we heard, didn't just switch on the refrigerator? I mean, they've been paid all this money, and like I said,
they were in the refrigerator.
Yeah,
but it wasn't turned on.
Yeah,
and they've been there for months.
You see why it's not a very nice topic.
If you can't afford to do it, I don't understand why you can't. But if you can't afford to do it with dignity and respect and just compassion and have a fucking soul, that these are people's loved ones. If you can't afford to do it properly, just don't do it at all.
No.
Stop it.
Well, here's the scariest question: is these are the cases that you've been made aware of? These are the ones who get discovered.
There's probably ones out there.
What about the rest?
Doing similar and they've just not been fucking found out yet, and that's sickening. Yeah. Sickening. Anyway.
So it's not a very nice episode.
No, it wasn't. But it's something that it needs to be talked about because it needs to change. It needs to change. This is unacceptable, and I can't even begin to imagine the trauma that these families went through, and not just the families, the law enforcement that had to go in and deal with this. Horrific scenes.
Trauma to them as well.
Absolutely horrific scenes. They're going to have severe PTSD. That's just like this.
Well, they might, because they're law enforcement of them areas, they might have used the services themselves.
Yeah, so
there's
not a lot I could do to solve it. But if you're in America and you're watching this and you're disgusted and you didn't realise this was such a problem, contact your local or your state or whatever or your nationwide. I don't know who you could just contact somebody, your senator or whoever, and just try and get some law made or get changes made in the process so that this doesn't continue happening and people can have the faith. Because, I mean, how can you continue to have the faith that no matter where you go, that it's going to be done properly?
Let's get a few more inspections going on a regular basis. Let's get...
you need to put legislation in place. You need to put laws in place. You need to have accountability for your actions or your lack of actions.
I think the crimes definitely need to be stiffer. I think the penalties need to be stiffer for these type of crimes because that's why they're doing it, because the amount of money that they're collecting in the meantime, whatever the fine is, they can probably handle it because they've
not been using it for what they were paid to do, so they've got loads of money, ain't they?
Yeah, supposedly.
Yeah, so I'm going to let Jamie wrap up because I'm traumatized.
Yeah. So again. What more can we say? I mean, that was a very difficult topic. I was going to be doing the moon landing, just, part 2 sort of thing this weekend. But then, I noticed that story in the news this month and I thought, well, this has got to be done because it's quite an important topic. And as I was looking into it, I was accidentally falling on other stories, not even meaning to. Because Lisa said to me, have you done the one about the so-and-so? And I said, no, I actually done this one instead. And we realised I'd fallen and done one by mistake because there was so many. There was so many. Anyway, but people share it and things like that. If you share
Let
tell people word of mouth, even.
Not for the sake of this,
no.
for the sake of so people know about this.
I think. Well, I'm hoping that with all this pressure and this media coverage, and this is the thing, like these particular people, this John or Michael or whatever his bloody name is, they might actually say we're not going to be allowed to get away with just giving him a year sentence and bloody £50,000 fine. They might have to actually do something. Hopefully.
The range, the fact that it's 180, nearly 200 bodies that they'll punish them per person, which they shouldn't do. Hopefully, if you put enough pressure on, it'll be appropriate. And that missing person really needs to be looked into as well, because there's something dodgy going on there. And it needs to be looked at, even if it's nothing, it needs to be looked into.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for sticking with us. This was hard. It was a tough one. We've done some quite horrendous true crime cases, but this was, for some reason, it seemed more difficult because it's something that we all have to deal with. It's something
that's the thing.
Seems like it could happen to any of us, because it's a process that we've all got to deal with. We've all got to entrust a stranger at one point in our lives to hopefully do the right thing with dignity and respect for our loved ones, and it's hard. So thank you very much, and hopefully next week we'll have a bit of a lighter topic. We will be going to the moon next week, and just take care of yourselves, and we love you all, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks for watching. Thank you. If Lisa can find the off button.
I'm traumatized. See you later.
See you later.